How is it going, guys, and welcome to the Olufemii channel. We're a group of teachers that want to shore up your video production skills in as little time as possible.
So we're all in this global situation, which has meant a lot of us have ended up spending a lot of time indoors, yours truly included. And you know, that gives us a lot of time to watch YouTube videos, virtual traveling to destinations we wish we'd gone to, learning how to cook stuff we never had time to cook, or watching gear videos for shoots we're never going to do. Now that last one is me, and this is my tale of how I started Frankensteining my humble A6400 into this monstrosity. And guys, this video is brought to you by the Product Video Masterclass. More on that later. So a bit of history. So when I first started freelancing, I wasn't sure if I was going to be mostly filming or editing, so I ended up buying a Canon 60D as my first freelance camera. It sported a nice flip out screen and of course could mount Canon glass, and at the time this thing was state of the art for its price range. But my freelance business took off in the post-production direction, and I never really needed a camera that could shoot 4K until recently. So I guess it was time for an upgrade. Thanks to a recommendation from the Think Media team and Sean Cannell, I ended up getting the Sony a6400, which is packed with features and has a pretty impressive picture to boot. But there were some drawbacks to this camera after getting it, which I didn't realize at the time, mostly because I actually just wasn't really in the camera market at the time. I'm mostly on the computers, guys. I don't really use cameras as much as I should, or as I used to. Now, first of all, this camera has an APS-C size sensor, which isn't necessarily bad, but I had no idea what that meant. It's just a smaller sensor, which just means you probably want to get lenses that suit that sensor size. For example, if you get a 16mm full frame lens and put it on APS-C size sensor, that means your picture will be more likely like a 24mm picture. It sort of crops the image in a little bit, so you don't quite get the full edges of the frame of the glass, if you know what I mean. The second thing I didn't know about this camera was the battery life would be terrible. Good luck taking this thing out to shoot for more than an hour. The battery life is so tiny. Look how small these batteries are. The other thing too is that this sensor for its size also suffers from crazy jello cam when you go handheld in 4K. The HD actually looks not too bad, but the 4K, forget about it. This thing is wobblier than a man leaving a pub at 3 AM in the morning. It is just wobbly. It is just jello. Plus, the flip out screen goes up and above, which makes some sense in some cases, but is crazy annoying in others. And it's tiny. Not super tiny, but tiny enough that it's hard to know if you have a shot in focus in small details. I noticed this when I was shooting my Suri anamorphic lens tests, and 20% of the stuff was out of focus because I actually couldn't see it even with the peaking on. Plus, I much prefer the flip out screen on the side, but that could just be me not liking how new stuff works. I'm kind of an old guy that way. But for all its quirks, I do have to say this camera is pretty good bang for your buck. For just under $1,000, it's not bad. So this brought me to the idea of how I could make this camera a better camera and give myself a better experience while shooting. So the first issue I wanted to address was to get a portable field monitor to mount on top of the camera, especially when I was vlogging, because I actually couldn't see the picture most of the time because the screen was just really tiny. I had tons of review recommendations, and getting something around 7 inches was what a lot of the guys online said, because a lot of them had bought actually a 5-inch screen, which is what I thought was what I wanted to get, but a lot of them said they just upgraded to a 7-inch eventually. There are a lot of contenders ranging from super cheap to super expensive like Small HD, but in the end I settled for this 7-inch Field World monitor. It feels a little bit plasticky, but not in a fall apart kind of way. It's also nice and bright, which is great outdoors. It does come with a sun hood as well, and it accepts HDMI and SDI in and supports 4K. And the price is pretty decent too. It actually was really hard to, fight this price range. I mean, I couldn't really argue with the fact that it was actually a pretty decent price. But of course, for the price that you pay for it, this thing definitely would have benefited from a few more custom buttons on it. Right now you can see that you can only assign 2 function buttons to the top of the monitor itself. There's no touchscreen either, which is fine with me because I don't really like touching the screen itself, but some people might not like that. The menus are basic, but they work fine. You do have to do a little bit of digging to get to where you want to be, so I don't particularly like the menu button. I just like to set things up and then just run with it. But overall, this monitor does do what it says on the box, so I'm not really complaining. Again, if you want to get more expensive things with more features, that's what the small HD monitors are for. But for what you want to get here, this works completely fine. Now, the next thing to do was to mount the monitor. First, I had to buy a cage for the camera itself so I could mount the monitor. Unfortunately, the camera does not have any mounting points except for the very bottom, which allows you to mount it to a tripod. And now we have an A6400 cage with tons of mounting points. I also decided at this point to add a rail system using, you guessed it, a small rig rail base plate with a couple of short rails. This is so we can mount our power supply later on, as well as give us some flexibility if we want to add arms or mat boxes, etc. Now, to mount the monitor, I used this small rig magic arm with NATO clamps on one side to give me a little bit more flexibility in my placement. The small rig monitor cage has a NATO rail built into the bottom of it, which is nice and handy to slide on and off as I need to. And guys, if you like what you're seeing today, smash the like button. It really helps us get the video out there so more people can see it. And look guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Click that subscribe button, get the bell notification so we can tell you when new videos are up, and we are posting content all the time. Gold, we are posting liquid gold. So guys, hit that subscribe button and we will love you forever. Now that we have the monitor set up, the next issue was to address how to get a longer lasting power supply to the camera itself. Obviously we can't stick in a bigger battery, but we could replace the current battery with this dummy battery. Now look, I tried a few times to try and make this dummy battery look sexy, but the truth is I really don't know how to shoot product videos. And that brings us to today's sponsor, the Product Video Masterclass, headed up by the awesome Olufemii content creator, Quinn Murphy. Now, here you'll learn all the tips and tricks on how to make your products pop off the screen and get people to sit up and notice you. Quinn covers everything from storyboarding, editing, lighting, strategies for getting new clients, using equipment, and so much more. Plus, you can learn at your own pace, so there's no rush to complete the course by some crazy deadline. Just learn at your leisure. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for the Product Video Masterclass today and get some of that sweet knowledge. All right, now that we've got this dummy battery, what are we going to do with it? We're going to plug it straight into where the battery was in the A6400, and there you go. And now we can plug it directly into a DC power supply. Now, what DC power supply, you ask? Well, that's where this little gem comes in, an MPF style battery plate, which you guessed it, allows us to use thick MPF style batteries and give us loads of power. We plug it into this 7.4 volt input, and hey presto, we got power for days. Thick. I decided later on to relocate the power supply to the back of the rail system we set up earlier, so it balances the camera a little better and also allows us to use the side mounting holes in the camera cage for something else. I mounted the power plate to a 15mm rod clamp to allow it to sit nicely at the end of the rails. Once the plate was set up, I used a 55cm HDMI to mini HDMI cable to connect the monitor and the camera. But wait, what's this thing on the other side of the battery plate? 12 volts? And wait, the monitor accepts 12 volts? And look at that, we can now power both the monitor and the camera off the same battery. Amazing stuff. Alright, so it's starting to become a lot more functional. We can see our pictures and we don't have to worry about batteries running out too quickly, but how does it feel to hold? Well, kind of terrible actually. The ergonomics of this thing are just awful. We're going to have to attach a few things to make this bad boy more handheld. Alright, so we have 2 hold points on the camera now. This SIG top handle, which is a NATO style, which allows me to quickly attach and detach the handle very easily in case I need to. And a second small rig wooden handle attached to the side to give me a little more grip, since the grip on this camera is a little bit small. So how does it feel when you walk around with it? not too shabby. In fact, it makes you feel a little bit like a pro. Now look, I understand you guys are like thinking, you know what this thing needs? More matte box. I get it. We all want more matte box, but look, I didn't have enough rails on this thing to mount a proper matte box onto this thing, so you're just gonna live without it for now. But my FX3 on the other hand, oh boy, you better believe I attached the matte box to that thing. All right, so there we go. And now the rig is complete. You can rock up to this client shoot with this fancy looking rig and they'll think you're a top shelf videographer. Of course, you'll still need to know how to actually work your camera, but it definitely looks more impressive, right? So the question is, how much did this all cost? Well, all right, we've got a spreadsheet here of everything that we've put onto the camera except the Sony a6400 itself, but all the bits and pieces are here. Let's tally this up and see what we get. $1,105. It's like buying a second camera. That's not too bad. To make it a better camera, I would say, you know, to get all those kind of features for an extra 1,000 Australian dollars, by the way, which if you actually look at it in US dollars, it's probably closer. Let's check. How much is this in US dollars? $1,005. That's just 800 bucks. It's pretty much as you would spend on the camera to make it a little bit more functional in a very significant way. I don't know what you think of that, but that's not bad. Actually, that's a lot cheaper than I thought it was going to be, considering that I spent a lot more than that on my FX3. Clearly, I went a little bit spend crazy, but hey, it was a fun build. And look, Amazon is an addiction. It's a real problem. So guys, if you've got a problem with buying things from Amazon, you know, seek some help. I'm telling you, just go seek some help. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed me showing you my over-the-top build. As you saw, I recently bought an FX3 as well. And boy, that thing is a beast just on its own. The pictures out of this thing are amazing. I shot this whole review on the FX3 actually. And I was not ready for the full frame life, let me tell you. Anyway guys, that is it. Thanks for watching, and if you want to check out everything else that's happening with me week to week, you can go check out nickbenku_motion on Instagram. Hit me up, send me a message, we can just chat. I'm usually posting stuff on my stories all the time anyway. I also give movie reviews if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Anyway guys, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Thick.